Move, you worthless trash from the ghetto! Richard Sterling shouted as his hand slapped across Dorothy Washington's face. The elderly woman's coffee cup flew from the table and shattered on the floor. Everyone in the cafe froze. Phones came out as people started recording. Dorothy touched her burning cheek, but she didn't cry. Her calm eyes met Sterling's angry glare without fear. Something in her steady look made him uneasy. He adjusted his expensive tie, feeling proud of himself. But what he didn't know was that Dorothy Washington wasn't just an ordinary woman. The way other customers looked at her with quiet respect said it all. Sterling had no idea what he had just started. Because Dorothy had a son, and when Vincent Washington found out what happened to his mother, Richard Sterling's perfect world would begin to fall apart in ways he could never imagine. Have you ever seen someone destroy their future with one moment of pure arrogance? Dorothy Washington's mornings were always the same. At exactly 6:30, she woke up in her small apartment. Sunlight glowing softly through lace curtains she had sewn herself 40 years ago. Her home showed a lifetime of care and love, family photos neatly arranged, fresh flowers from her window garden, and books that showed her sharp, educated mind. Each photo told a story. Dorothy in her graduation gown holding her PhD in education. Dorothy with her late husband. Samuel dancing at their anniversary party, and most proudly, her son Vincent, in photos from formal dinners, charity events, and business meetings. He was always dressed sharply, always respected by everyone around him. Her neighbors knew Vincent was successful, very successful. But Dorothy never shared too many details. She would simply say, something in business, with a proud smile. Important meetings, big responsibilities, expensive suits, and private cars. That was Vincent's world. At exactly H, her phone rang. "Morning, Ma. Sleep well?" Vincent's warm voice filled her heart. Dorothy smiled and sat in her favorite chair. "Like a baby, sweetheart. How's work treating you?" "Can't complain. Business is business," he said. "Do you have any plans today?" "Lunch with Helen at Rosie's, our usual Tuesday," Dorothy replied. Vincent paused. He always worried about her going out alone, though she never understood why. Her neighborhood was peaceful, filled with kind people she'd known for decades. "Ma, you know I could arrange something nicer," Vincent said. "Private dining rooms, good service, places that suit your class." Dorothy laughed softly. "Vincent Washington, I raised you better than that. Good people matter more than fancy places. Rosie's has both, good food and good hearts." "Yes, ma'am," he said gently. "Just be careful, okay? People aren't always what they seem." "I'll be fine, baby. You worry too much about your old mother. It's my job to worry. Love you, Ma." The call ended quickly. Vincent never liked long phone talks, even with family. He was a busy man, always making big decisions and attending important meetings. Dorothy understood that, across the city, Richard Sterling's morning looked completely different. His penthouse office covered the entire 42nd floor of the city's most famous tower. Huge glass windows showed the view of the busy financial district below. The marble floors shined under crystal chandeliers, and the leather furniture cost more than most families made in a year. Sterling stood by the window like a king looking over his empire. His reflection showed a man with perfectly styled hair, a hand-tailored suit, and a gold Rolex catching the morning light. Every detail about him was designed to show power, confidence, and success. His assistant, Jennifer, walked up carefully. She knew his mood could change in seconds. "Sir, your 10 a.m. appointment files are ready," she said. "Also, Mrs. Carter called to reschedule her meeting." Sterling's face darkened. "Mrs. Carter? That woman with the thick accent who can barely speak proper English? Tell people like her to learn communication before wasting my time." "Sir," Jennifer said quietly. "She actually speaks 5 languages and runs 3 successful tech companies. Her record is very impressive." "I don't care if she runs 50 companies," Sterling snapped. "Image matters in this business. My reputation depends on dealing with the right kind of people. People who belong in places like this. People with real class." This was Richard Sterling's world, one built on pride and control. To him, success meant looking down on others. Power meant never caring about anyone's struggles, dreams, or humanity. He made his career defending rich corporations in discrimination cases, making sure the powerful always stayed untouchable while everyone else suffered quietly. Sterling's phone buzzed with endless news updates, videos of police brutality going viral, reports exposing racism in hiring, and government hearings about hate crimes. He scrolled past them all without emotion. In his mind, these were problems for other people, people who didn't matter to his world of comfort and power. Meanwhile, at Rosie's diner, the day was just beginning. Maria Santos, the owner, moved quickly between tables. She had inherited the diner from her father, continuing his 30 years of serving the neighborhood with warmth and love. Construction workers came in for breakfast before work. Office employees escaped their boring cafeterias to enjoy real food and friendly talk. Older customers, loyal since the diner first opened, filled their usual spots, and among them, Dorothy Washington was like neighborhood royalty. Every Tuesday at noon, she arrived with her church friend, Helen Morrison. They always sat at the same corner booth, ordered the same meals, and filled the room with calm and kindness. Maria always made sure everything was perfect for them. Table 6 was cleaned twice. Good china was set, napkins neatly folded, and a small flower vase placed in the center. This respect wasn't for show, it was real. Dorothy had earned it over the years, through her quiet kindness and her way of helping others. When Maria's father had a stroke, it was Dorothy who organized meals and hospital visits. And when greedy developers tried to evict the diner, Dorothy somehow found a lawyer who handled the case for free. No one ever asked how she managed to find such powerful help. Everyone just assumed her successful son, Vincent, had strong connections in high places. That afternoon, a man sat quietly in the corner booth reading a financial newspaper. His coffee had gone cold, but his sharp eyes missed nothing. Old habits die hard, especially when you've spent your life watching people carefully. The chain of events that would soon explode began with something small, an accidental bump. Dorothy had just settled into her favorite booth when Richard Sterling stormed through Rosie's front door like a man ready for battle. His expensive Armani suit was wrinkled from a bad morning. He'd gotten a parking ticket, been delayed by traffic, and argued with a rude barista. Now he was angry at the world. Sterling looked around the diner with disgust. Cracked seats, plastic menus, the smell of frying oil. It was everything he thought he was above. But his usual upscale restaurant was fully booked, so he'd have to survive lunch among ordinary people. Maria Santos greeted him politely despite sensing trouble. "Good afternoon, sir." "Table for one?" "Obviously," Sterling snapped. "Somewhere clean, if that exists in this place. And make it quick, I have important meetings." Maria kept her smile, led him to a table near Dorothy's booth, and quietly walked away. Sterling sat down roughly, took out his phone and began sending angry text messages, his fingers tapping fast with irritation. At the next table, Dorothy and Helen chatted peacefully. Helen was telling a story about her grandson getting into college when Dorothy reached for the sugar. Her elbow brushed lightly against Sterling's briefcase resting on the edge of his table. The touch was barely noticeable, but it was enough. Sterling's coffee cup tipped over, hot liquid spilled across his expensive leather briefcase and onto the piles of legal papers inside. He froze for a second, staring in disbelief as the brown coffee soaked through his contracts and important documents, work that had taken him weeks to prepare. "What the hell?" Sterling shouted, jumping to his feet. The whole diner went silent. Conversation stopped. Forks hung in midair. Every person turned to look at him. Dorothy gasped softly and reached for napkins. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Let me help you clean this up." But Sterling was past listening. All his anger, pride, and frustration came crashing down at once. In his mind, people like Dorothy only existed to make his life harder. "You clumsy old woman. Look what you've done," he yelled. Dorothy froze, her hands shaking as she held the napkins. Helen stared in shock. Maria hurried toward them. But Sterling's voice cut through the diner like a knife. "These documents are worth more than your entire life," he shouted. "You'll pay for this, you useless woman," Sterling shouted. "Do you have any idea what you've cost me?" Dorothy slowly stood up. Even after being humiliated in front of everyone, her dignity stayed unshaken. "Sir," she said calmly, "it was an accident. I'll gladly pay for any cleaning costs." "Cleaning costs?" Sterling's voice rose until it almost became a scream. "These are important legal papers. Contracts with Fortune 500 companies. Do you realize what this means for real Americans who could lose their jobs because of people like you?" His words carried a clear tone of racism. The people inside the diner began recording with their phones, sensing something serious was happening. Dorothy's voice stayed calm and respectful. I understand that you're upset, but there's no need to use that kind of language. Don't tell me how to talk, Sterling yelled, stepping closer. His tall frame towered over Dorothy's small, seated body. You people need to learn your place. This is what happens when you let just anyone into decent places like this. Helen Morrison, Dorothy's friend and a retired school principal, finally spoke up. Young man, you're being unreasonable. It was an accident. Sterling turned on her sharply. And you can shut up too. I don't need lectures from welfare queens about manners. The slurs were loud and hateful now. There was no way to misunderstand them. Phones were up everywhere, recording his every word. Maria Santos, the owner, stepped forward. Sir, please lower your voice or leave my restaurant. Sterling glared at her. Your restaurant? This filthy dump? You should thank me for even walking in here. People like me are the reason places like this survive. Dorothy stood up slowly. Though she was much shorter, her presence was strong and commanding. Sir, she said clearly, I've already apologized for the accident. I've offered to pay for any damage, but I will not let you speak to me, my friend, or this kind business owner with such disrespect. Sterling's face twisted in anger. The idea that an elderly black woman dared to stand up to him was more than his pride could handle. You'll sit down and shut up, he hissed, or I'll make sure you regret ever leaving the government housing you came from. Dorothy's voice stayed firm as stone. I have every right to be here. I've been coming to this diner longer than you've probably known this neighborhood existed. I'm a taxpayer, a community member, and a human being who deserves basic respect. Sterling laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. Human beings? You're nothing but a burden on society. You and your whole worthless kind. The words filled the air like poison. Every phone in the room was recording. In the corner, the well-dressed man who had been reading his newspaper quietly lowered it. His attention was fully on the scene now. Dorothy lifted her head proudly. Even in her age and simplicity, she carried a quiet strength that made Sterling's expensive clothes look cheap. Young man, she said firmly, you clearly have no idea who you're talking to. I know exactly who you are, Sterling snapped. You're nobody. A nobody from nowhere who means nothing to anyone. The room went silent. Then Sterling's hand shot out. He grabbed Dorothy's wrist tightly, his fingers digging into her skin. You're going to sit down, be quiet, and figure out how to pay for what you destroyed. Dorothy looked at his hand gripping her, then looked up at him. Sir, you need to let go of me now. I'll let go when you show respect to your betters, Sterling spat. Helen jumped up from her seat. Let go of her this instant, she shouted. Maria moved closer, holding up her phone. Sir, release her right now, or I'm calling the police. But Sterling wasn't listening. His anger had completely taken control. The stress, the caffeine, and a lifetime of believing he was above everyone else. All of it boiled over at once. Dorothy tried to pull her hand free, still calm but unafraid. Her eyes met his with quiet strength, as if she had faced far worse men than him before. That calm look broke something inside Richard Sterling. His free hand came up fast. The slap rang through the diner like a gunshot. Dorothy's head snapped to the side. Napkins and coffee spilled to the floor. Her wedding ring, Samuel's ring, worn for 52 years, flew off her finger and rolled across the floor. It stopped at the polished shoes of the man sitting in the corner booth. For a moment, nobody moved. Then chaos erupted. Customers jumped to their feet. Phones raised high, recording everything. Maria was already calling 911, and Helen rushed to Dorothy's side. Dorothy sat quietly, tears running down her face. But she didn't cry. She touched her cheek where Sterling had slapped her and felt the heat spreading across her dark skin. Dorothy looked at Richard Sterling, not with fear or anger, but with pity. You have no idea what you just did, she said softly. Sterling straightened his tie. His breathing was heavy, but he looked proud of himself. To him, it was just another moment of putting a nobody in their place, another lesson about who he thought was in control. But in the corner booth, one of Vincent Washington's most trusted men was already calling a number that would change everything. The man picked up Dorothy's ring from the floor and put it in his pocket, maybe as evidence, or maybe to return it to the woman his boss loved more than life itself. When police sirens echoed in the distance, Richard Sterling had exactly 18 hours left to believe he was untouchable. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez arrived at Rosie's diner expecting a normal disturbance call. Instead, he found several phones still recording and the air filled with tension. Sterling quickly took control. "Officer, thank God you're here. I was attacked while trying to have a peaceful lunch," he said, showing his ID. "Richard Sterling, senior partner at Crawford Sterling and Associates. That woman damaged my property and attacked me when I asked for payment." Rodriguez looked around. Every witness stared at Sterling with disgust, not what you'd expect if he were truly the victim. "Sir, step back and let me assess the situation," Rodriguez said calmly. Sterling tried to impress him. "Detective Captain Morrison is my friend. Commissioner Walsh is in my country club. I trust this will be handled properly." Dorothy gave her statement quietly, showing strength despite her swollen cheek. When asked for an emergency contact, she handed over a classy business card. "My son, Vincent Washington. He's a private consultant." Rodriguez noticed the expensive card and asked, "What kind of consulting, ma'am?" Dorothy smiled gently. "He helps people solve problems." Within an hour, phone footage from the diner hit social media. The hashtag, Justice for Dorothy, started trending fast. People identified Sterling and shared his law firm's website, the same firm that defended companies accused of discrimination. The irony spread like wildfire. Inside Sterling's office, panic began. Partners held emergency meetings as clients called in with concerns, but Sterling stayed confident. "This will pass," he said. "People understand that actions have consequences." Meanwhile, Dorothy made a calm phone call. "Vincent, honey, I had a little trouble at lunch today." Her son's voice instantly changed, from calm businessman to something sharp and protective. "What kind of trouble, Ma?" "Are you hurt?" "A misunderstanding with a customer. He got angry over spilled coffee and hit me." There was silence. Then Vincent spoke slowly, his voice cold. "He hit you." "It's just a bruise. Police are here." There were witnesses. "I wanted you to know." "What's his name?" "Richard Sterling. He's some kind of lawyer." A longer silence followed. Then Vincent said firmly, "Ma, listen carefully. Don't talk to reporters, don't sign anything. I'm handling this now." "Vincent, you don't need to—" "Ma," he interrupted, his voice final. "Someone put their hands on you. This is business now." Sterling was charged with assault but released. Standard procedure for a first-time offender. That night he posted online, claiming he was the real victim. He said Dorothy was trying to shake him down and blamed political correctness. His supporters flooded the comments, cheering him for standing up against so-called race hustlers. The online support made him feel untouchable again. He thought the controversy would fade in a few weeks. He'd seen power games before. He thought he knew who mattered and who didn't. He was wrong. That was the most costly mistake of his life. While Sterling slept peacefully, phone calls were being made all across the city, quiet talks between people who owed favors and respected old debts. Everyone knew one rule: you don't touch Vincent Washington's family. And soon, the system was going to work in a way Richard Sterling could never imagine. Vincent Washington sat in a private restaurant in the city's financial district. At first glance, it looked like a normal business dinner: expensive suits, quiet talks, and powerful deals made with a handshake. But these weren't company executives. Vincent sat at the head of the table with calm authority. To his right was Tommy the Fish Marinette, who controlled the docks. To his left sat Maria Duca, who managed the family's legal businesses. Around them were lieutenants, advisors, and enforcers, all waiting for Vincent's word. This meeting wasn't about stocks or profits. It was about territory, money, and the daily choices that kept the Washington family's empire running. Vincent wasn't just successful. He was the boss. He ruled half the city's underground, whirled and maintained order with strict discipline. In the middle of a discussion about a construction deal, Vincent's phone buzzed. The screen showed one word: Ma. He immediately stood up. "Excuse me," he said quietly. The whole room went silent. When Vincent got a call from his mother, everyone knew nothing else mattered. He stepped into a private office and closed the door. "Ma, what's wrong?" he asked. Dorothy's calm voice came through the phone. "I had a little trouble at lunch today. A man got angry over spilled coffee and hit me." The air around Vincent seemed to freeze. He hit you? His tone stayed even, but anyone nearby could feel the danger behind his words. His name is Richard Sterling. He's some kind of lawyer. Vincent closed his eyes for a moment. He processed the name slowly, like a man who understood every move had consequences. Someone had laid hands on his mother, the one person he loved above all. Are you hurt, Ma? Do you need a doctor? Just a bruise, sweetheart. Helen's with me. The police were kind. Vincent's mind was already working, fast, cold, and focused. The part of him that had survived the streets wanted immediate payback. But Dorothy had raised him to be smarter than that. Ma, listen carefully, he said. Don't talk to reporters. Don't sign anything. And don't worry about this man. I'll take care of everything. Vincent, honey, you don't need to get involved. Ma. The single word was enough. Someone hit you. This stopped being a small problem the moment he did that. Vincent ended the call and stood still for 30 seconds, staring at the city lights outside his window. It was his city, one he controlled completely. Then he walked back into the dining room. 8 people looked up, waiting for orders. Change of plans, Vincent said. Tommy, I need everything on a lawyer named Richard Sterling. Full report, background, money, family, weaknesses. 2 hours, Tommy nodded, already dialing. What kind of lawyer, boss? The kind who thinks he can slap my mother and walk away. The reaction was instant. Chairs moved, hands went to hidden weapons. Maria Duca's face turned pale. Boss, just say the word. Vincent lifted his hand, and everyone froze. That was why they followed him. Not just because of fear, but because he knew when not to strike. We do this right, Vincent said firmly. Ma wants justice, not revenge. We'll use the system, but we'll make sure the system actually works. Across town, Richard Sterling was having dinner at his country club. He bragged to his rich friends about what had happened, twisting the story to make himself the victim. He called Dorothy greedy and accused her of trying to scam him. His friends laughed and agreed. The kind of people who thought the world's problems came from others not knowing their place. Sterling had no clue that his entire life was already being investigated by the best people Vincent could hire. These weren't ordinary detectives. They were experts at finding secrets and pressure points. Within an hour, Vincent had the full report. It showed Sterling's hidden debts, secret settlements, and discrimination cases quietly closed before trial. It also revealed that Sterling owed a large sum of money to Michael Big Mike Torino, Vincent's cousin. The irony made Vincent smile coldly. His first call was to District Attorney Margaret Carter. They'd known each other since childhood. She'd gone to Dorothy's Sunday school for years. Maggie, it's Vincent. We need to talk, he said. Her voice turned serious. Vincent, I can't discuss cases with you. It's about my mother. There was a pause. She knew exactly who Dorothy Washington was and what she meant to the community. Is she all right? Someone assaulted her today, Richard Sterling. I just want to make sure the case gets proper attention. Vincent, I can't promise special treatment. I'm not asking for favors, Maggie. I'm asking for justice, the kind my mother always believed in. She was silent for a long time. Dorothy had once written the letter that helped her win a scholarship to law school. Finally, Carter said quietly, "Send me the case number. I'll review it myself." Vincent's second call was to Police Commissioner Frank Walsh, another man who'd known Dorothy for decades. His third call was to Judge Patricia Martinez, whose first legal job had come from Dorothy's recommendation. One by one, Vincent contacted people who owed his mother respect, not out of fear, but out of gratitude. By midnight, Richard Sterling's assault case was marked as a high priority, not because of threats or power, but because Dorothy Washington had spent 50 years helping others rise. Vincent Washington ruled through fear in the criminal world, but Dorothy Washington ruled through something far greater, respect in the real world. While Sterling slept soundly, thinking his influence would save him, Dorothy's connections were already moving faster, higher, and deeper than as ever could. The most powerful man in the city was about to teach Richard Sterling a lesson, the difference between power and influence, between fear and respect, and then between what money can buy and what character earns. At 6:00 a.m., District Attorney Margaret Carter arrived early at her office. The Sterling case file was waiting on her desk. She knew this day would come. when her duty as a DA would meet her loyalty to Dorothy Washington. Carter opened the file. Body cam footage, witness videos, and phone clips. The proof was overwhelming, but what stayed in her mind wasn't the evidence. It was Vincent's calm call at midnight. She remembered the woman who had believed in her when no one else did. Now, Dorothy's son was asking only for fairness, nothing more. Carter picked up the phone.
James, I need you in my office right now.
Bring the Sterling assault case. Assistant DA James Rodriguez arrived within 20 minutes, coffee in hand. Ma'am, this looks like a simple assault. Why the priority? Because Sterling has a pattern, Carter said, spreading the files across the table. 3 other incidents, all settled quietly, all involving minority victims. She handed him another folder. Discrimination suits, harassment claims, all buried before reaching court. Rodriguez shook his head. So he's been using the system to silence people. And now he's the one who got caught. Exactly, Carter said. Build this case like it's the biggest trial of your life. Because if we don't stop him now, Dorothy Washington won't be his last victim. She didn't mention her personal connection to Dorothy. She didn't have to. The truth, and the evidence, would speak for itself. Walsh was having a serious talk with Detective Captain Sarah Morrison. Captain, I want you to personally handle the Sterling case, he said firmly. Use every resource, be completely transparent, and follow the law exactly. Morrison frowned. Sir, this is a minor assault case. We don't usually assign a detective captain for that. Richard Sterling attacked a 72-year-old woman in front of witnesses. Walsh interrupted. This case will attract the media, the community, and maybe even federal attention if we don't handle it right. I want it done properly. Walsh had personal reasons for caring so much. 20 years ago, when he was a rookie cop struggling with PTSD from his military service, Dorothy Washington had helped save his career. She connected him to counseling services and spoke for his character when internal affairs wanted to punish him. Dorothy had given him a second chance when no one else would. Morrison gathered her best detectives and started reviewing all the evidence again. The body camera footage exposed Sterling's lies to the responding officers. Witness statements clearly showed how his behavior turned into racial harassment. Cell phone videos captured every insult, every threat, and every cruel moment he had forced on Dorothy. But the worst evidence came from Sterling himself. His social media posts that night showed him bragging about putting entitled minorities in their place and boasting about his powerful connections. He had basically recorded his own hate crime. Meanwhile, at Sterling and Associates, the senior partners were realizing the full damage. Managing partner Harrison Crawford sat with the founding partners in an emergency meeting, reading Sterling's record with growing shock. Gentlemen, we have a serious problem, Crawford said. Richard's actions have created legal risk for the whole firm. Our insurance doesn't cover hate crimes, and our major clients are already questioning us. Partner Thomas Wakefield showed them a video on his tablet. The video already has 2 million views. Justice for Dorothy is trending nationwide. Our biggest client just canceled their contract. We need to cut Sterling off immediately, said partner Elizabeth Hayes. Release a public statement, condemning his actions and suspend him. But it was too late. Vincent Washington's people had been busy all night, making calls, spreading information, and making sure Sterling's full history became public. By morning, journalists had his complete disciplinary record. Former employees and clients came forward with stories of harassment and discrimination. Sterling's fake reputation was collapsing fast. At 10 a.m., Sterling arrived at his office and found security guards waiting with boxes for his things. What is this? He shouted. Crawford stood behind them, his face grim. Richard, the partners have voted to fire you effective immediately. Your actions have disgraced this firm and put us at risk for lawsuits. You can't fire me! I'm a founding partner, Sterling protested. Read your partnership contract, Crawford said coldly. The morality clause is clear about actions that harm the firm's reputation. Sterling turned pale. Without the firm's protection, he was just another defendant facing criminal charges. Harrison, we've been friends for 20 years. My clients bring in millions. Your former clients, Crawford replied. They've all requested new lawyers. He handed Sterling a letter. You have 1 hour to pack your things. Security will escort you out. As Sterling packed, his assistant Jennifer was flooded with calls. from reporters, civil rights groups, and federal investigators looking into his pattern of discrimination. His phone buzzed nonstop with notifications, clients ending contracts, colleagues cutting ties, even his country club questioning his membership. The social isolation was complete, but Vincent Washington wasn't done. That afternoon, FBI agent Patricia Valdez visited Sterling. "Mr. Sterling, we'd like to discuss your work for Megalith Corporation, specifically your methods for silencing minority plaintiffs." Sterling's lawyer told him to stay silent, but the damage was done. The federal investigation triggered by Dorothy's assault was now spreading across Sterling's entire career. Judge Patricia Martinez reviewed the case and noted Sterling's long history of using legal tricks to avoid punishment. This time she made sure every rule was followed and every piece of evidence was admitted. The system Sterling once abused was now working against him, run by people who owed Dorothy Washington their success. That evening, Sterling sat alone in his luxury apartment, watching the news of his downfall. The elderly woman he thought was nobody had destroyed everything he'd built. He couldn't understand how it happened so quickly. Sterling didn't know that Dorothy Washington had spent 50 years helping others, believing in their potential, supporting their education, and treating people with kindness. Her son, Vincent, ruled through fear, but Dorothy ruled through love, loyalty, and gratitude. She was a mother figure to half the city's most powerful people: judges, prosecutors, police, and community leaders who never forgot what she did for them. The investigation was moving faster than anyone expected, not because of corruption, but because so many people wanted to repay Dorothy by ensuring true justice. Sterling's world was falling apart exactly as Vincent planned, through the legal system, with dignity, and guided by the principles Dorothy had always taught. The city's most feared man was keeping his promise to his mother. Richard Sterling would face justice properly. But patience had limits. Sterling was about to learn that some mistakes can never be undone, no matter how powerful you think you are. The courtroom was packed the next morning. Reporters filled the halls, cameras flashing. Civil rights leaders sat with local residents, and federal observers watched from the back. The case, People versus Richard Sterling, had become a symbol of something far bigger than one act of violence. Sterling entered the courtroom with his new lawyer, a public defender named Michael Carter, the only one left to take his case after his old legal team quit. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by a cheap jacket. His proud walk had turned into a slow shuffle of a man who'd lost everything. In the front row sat Dorothy Washington, dressed neatly and full of quiet strength. Beside her sat Helen Morrison, holding her hand. And in the back of the courtroom, almost hidden, Vincent Washington watched, silent and patient, like a predator waiting for the right moment. When Sterling's eyes met Vincent's, he finally understood who Dorothy's son truly was. The suit, the respect, the power, all made sense. Sterling realized too late that the countdown to his destruction had already begun. To Sterling, Vincent Washington had once seemed like just another successful businessman. But now he understood the truth. This was the man who owned half the city, a man both feared and respected, whose protection Dorothy had quietly enjoyed for years without even realizing it. Judge Martinez called the courtroom to order. The People versus Richard Sterling. Case number 2024 CR 4751, she announced. Charges: assault in the third degree, aggravated harassment, and civil rights violations. Assistant District Attorney James Rodriguez stood to present the case. For 3 weeks he had built an argument that showed this wasn't just a random act of violence. "Your Honor," he began, "the defendant didn't just slap Mrs. Dorothy Washington. He committed a hate crime against a respected member of our community, using racial slurs and violence to frighten an elderly woman, whose only crime was being in a place he thought didn't belong to her." Rodriguez carefully presented the evidence. Body camera footage showed Sterling lying to the police. Cell phone videos captured every hateful word. Witnesses described how his anger grew into open racism. And then came Sterling's own social media posts, boasting about the attack. But the most damaging proof came from his past. "The defendant," Rodriguez continued, "has a long history of targeting minorities. 3 previous incidents, multiple lawsuits where he used fear and legal tricks to silence victims. This wasn't an accident. It was a career built on discrimination." Sterling's public defender, overworked and outmatched, could only offer weak objections. "Your Honor," he said, My client has no prior criminal convictions. This was one stressful day, an isolated mistake. Judge Martinez's face stayed calm, but everyone could sense her anger. She had read Sterling's full file and seen years of hidden abuse. "Mr. Carter," she said, "your client's clean record doesn't erase 2 decades of civil rights violations. Call your first witness." Against his lawyer's advice, Sterling decided to testify in his own defense. His arrogance was still alive. "Your Honor," he began confidently, "I was the real victim that day. Mrs. Washington damaged important legal documents, then became aggressive when I asked for fair compensation. I may have reacted too strongly, but I was provoked." Rodriguez stepped forward for the cross-examination, his tone sharp and calm. "Mr. Sterling, you said Mrs. Washington became hostile. What exactly do you mean by that?" "She argued with me and refused to take responsibility," Sterling replied. "Did she raise her voice?" "No." "Did she threaten you in any way?" "Not exactly. So what did she do?" "She was disrespectful." "Disrespectful how?" "By being in a restaurant you thought was too good for her." Sterling's lawyer tried to object, but it was too late. The damage was done. Rodriguez pressed harder. "You used the phrase 'you people' several times. What did you mean by that?" "I meant people who don't take responsibility for their actions," Sterling stammered. "Is that why you called her a ghetto rat and a welfare queen?" "Because she wouldn't take responsibility." Sterling's mask broke. "I was angry. She cost me thousands in ruined papers." Rodriguez leaned in. "Documents that you left uncovered on a restaurant table. The same ones you spilled coffee on yourself before Mrs. Washington even walked over." The courtroom buzzed. Security footage showed Sterling knocking over his own coffee before Dorothy even stood up. His lies were falling apart. When Dorothy took the stand, the room went completely silent. Rodriguez treated her with deep respect, asking each question gently. "Mrs. Washington, please tell the court what happened when you accidentally bumped Mr. Sterling's table." "I apologized right away," she said softly. "I offered to help clean the mess and pay for any damages." "How did Mr. Sterling respond?" "He became angry and started using inappropriate language." "Can you tell the court what he said?" Dorothy's voice stayed calm. "He called me ghetto trash and said people like me didn't belong in decent places. How did that make you feel?" For the first time, her voice trembled slightly. "It reminded me of the past, when people spoke that kind of hate openly. I thought our country had moved beyond that." Then came the question that ended Sterling's defense. "Mrs. Washington," Rodriguez asked gently, "why didn't you just leave the restaurant?" Dorothy straightened her shoulders. "Because I had every right to be there," she said firmly. "I've been a customer at Rosie's for 15 years. I've lived in that neighborhood for 45. I've served my community as a teacher, a volunteer, and a neighbor. I wasn't going to let hate chase me away." The courtroom broke into applause. Judge Martinez called for order, but even her eyes were wet. When it came time for character witnesses, no one showed up for Sterling. His former colleagues avoided him. Country club members claimed they barely knew him. Even his own family stayed silent. Dorothy's side was the opposite. Her witnesses filled the courtroom. Former students who'd become doctors and lawyers, neighbors whose kids she had tutored, and community leaders whose success began with her kindness. Maria Santos spoke about how Dorothy helped save the diner during hard economic times. Helen Morrison shared their close friendship and described Dorothy's kind and gentle nature. Dr. Patricia Williams, now a federal judge, told the court about a scholarship recommendation Dorothy had written for her 20 years ago. It became clear that Dorothy Washington had spent her life helping others, while Richard Sterling had spent his career hurting people. Judge Martinez went to deliberate after hearing the final arguments. Less than 30 minutes later, he returned with the decision. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, "This court finds the defendant guilty on all charges," the judge said. "Mr. Sterling, your actions show not just one act of violence, but a pattern of cruelty that has no place in our society." Sterling's face turned pale as the judge continued. "You are sentenced to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of probation. You must also complete 500 hours of community service with minority organizations, attend sensitivity training, and pay full restitution to Mrs. Washington for her medical costs and emotional pain." But the judge wasn't done. "This court also recommends that the state bar review your license to practice law. Your actions show a serious lack of character that does not belong in the legal profession." Sterling's legs almost gave out. His career was over. His reputation was destroyed. His freedom was gone. As the bailiff approached with handcuffs, Sterling looked at Vincent Washington one last time. Vincent didn't smile or nod. He didn't even look angry. He simply stood, walked toward his mother and left. The man who had silently planned Sterling's downfall had succeeded without ever using violence. Dorothy hugged her son softly as they left the courtroom. "Thank you for handling this the right way." "Vincent," she said. "You taught me well, Ma," he replied. Justice matters more than revenge. Outside the courthouse, District Attorney Carter announced new rules for prosecuting hate crimes. Police Commissioner Walsh introduced better training for officers handling bias incidents. Judge Martinez's decision created a legal precedent that would protect future victims. The case had achieved exactly what Vincent hoped for, destroying Sterling through lawful means while improving the system that protected people like his mother. Richard Sterling was taken away in handcuffs. Now a broken man. He had once believed power made him untouchable, but now he learned that true strength comes from love, not fear. Dorothy Washington returned to Rosie's diner for her weekly lunch, treated like the queen she had always been. Her son, Vincent, made sure no one ever repeated Sterling's mistake again. 6 months later, Dorothy walked into Rosie's diner for her usual lunch with Helen. The same booth waited for her. The same warm smiles greeted her. But everything had changed since Sterling's sentencing. The city had recognized Dorothy's grace and courage. Mayor Patricia Johnson presented her with the key to the city at a ceremony attended by hundreds. The award read, "For showing that dignity and courage can defeat prejudice." Dorothy used her new platform to help others, partnering with the district attorney's office to create the Dorothy Washington Center for Bias Crime Victims. Federal grants funded it, and many volunteer lawyers, some of them Dorothy's former students, donated countless hours. "It's not about me," Dorothy told reporters. "It's about making sure no one faces what I faced alone." The Sterling case soon became required reading in law. Schools. Police departments updated their bias training programs. The state bar created stricter character standards for lawyers. Meanwhile, Richard Sterling learned about justice from the other side. Every Saturday, he reported for community service at the East Side Community Center. His supervisor, Mrs. Angela Rodriguez, a 78-year-old retired teacher, didn't go easy on him. "You'll be serving meals to seniors who look just like the woman you attacked," she said. "Learn their names, hear their stories, respect their dignity." The work humbled Sterling. He saw elderly black women volunteering, organizing food drives, helping children, and showing the same patience Dorothy had shown her students. Slowly, he began to understand what he had tried to destroy. A community built on kindness and strength. Vincent watched all of this quietly. His mother's dignity had done what violence never could. It created real change, reformed the system, and protected future victims. During Sunday dinner, Vincent said, "Ma, you changed more lives through 15 minutes of grace than I did in 15 years of intimidation." Dorothy smiled and replied, "Violence wins battles, Vincent, but love wins wars." At Rosie's diner, Maria hung a framed newspaper clipping from Dorothy's award ceremony beside photos of local families and students who had found hope there. One afternoon, a young law student approached Dorothy. "Mrs. Washington, I'm Sarah Carter. I'm studying civil rights law. You inspired me to fight hate with dignity." Dorothy smiled and said, "Sit down, dear. Tell me about your family." As Sarah shared her story, her immigrant parents, their struggles, and her dream to protect others, Dorothy saw herself in her. That was the real victory. Not Sterling's punishment, but the inspiration her courage had given to a new generation. The Sterling case created lasting change. Systems improved. Hope was renewed, and people believed again in justice. Dorothy continued to do what she always had, helping others, believing in growth, and fighting injustice with grace. She proved that the most powerful act of all is refusing to let hatred make you hateful. Have you ever stood up for someone who couldn't defend themselves? Have you ever discovered the quiet power of kindness? Share your story in the comments, like if you believe dignity defeats hatred. Subscribe for more true stories where justice rises from unexpected places, where ordinary people achieve extraordinary things by choosing hope over hate. because you never know who's watching when you choose kindness, or whose life might change forever because you did what's right instead of what's easy. We tell the truth exactly as it happened, because that's the only way truth can live. If this story touched your heart, like, comment, and subscribe. Every week, we share voices that refuse to be silenced.